14 years I had kept a standing order in every healing house south of the Greymark River, and on the morning it was finally answered. I was in the middle of telling a border lord that his complaint about grazing rights would have to wait until spring. A rider's horse went down in the courtyard before he'd even dismounted, and I was on my feet and moving before the herald reached the door, before I'd read a single word because I already knew. I had been waiting 14 years to know. 14 years ago I had been a younger man, a crown prince, and the night before my wedding to Senna of the River Holds, a match my father had arranged with his last breath to end 40 years of border raids. A quiet woman in Senna's retinue refilled my cup at the feast, and the moment her fingers brushed mine, something in me that had been turning restlessly for as long as I could remember simply stopped, like a compass needle that had spun its whole life finally finding north. I said nothing. I married Senna the next morning, because peace mattered more than a feeling I didn't yet have a name for, and because a prince does not announce a faded bond with his bride's attendant at his own wedding feast. By the time I understood what I had felt, by the time I had worked up the courage to even learn her name, Wren was gone. No note beyond 3 lines, that she wished us well, that she would not be a complication, and that I should not look for her. I have never been good at doing as I'm told. Senna and I were married for 2 years, kindly, honestly, like two people who respect each other and want different things from their lives. When her Pax Southern treaty resolved itself without my crown's help, the marriage ended as quietly as it had begun, and she went on to marry a man from her own hold who made her laugh in a way I never had. I was glad for her. I have stayed unmarried 12 years since. What I did instead was send a standing description to every healing house, every border post, every traveling physician's guild from Greymark to the southern marshes. A woman, dark-haired, quiet, with a healer's hands and an old burn scar shaped like a crescent moon on her left wrist. 12 years of reports. 12 years of women with the right scar and the wrong eyes, or the right eyes and no scar at all. My steward stopped apologizing for them around year 9. I never stopped reading them. There were years in the middle of all that when I nearly stopped. Not the search itself. I could not have stopped that any more than I could stop my own pulse, but the hopping that came with each new report. A king learns eventually to open a dispatch the way he might open a door he expects to find empty, carefully, so the disappointment does not show on his face before he has had a chance to compose it. My court had long since decided I was simply a man who did not marry. It was easier to let them think that than to explain the rest. This dispatch was different. A flood had taken out the bridge at Thistlewood, on our southernmost border, and in the chaos a healer there had set 11 broken bones in a single night without once raising her voice. When the relief rider thanked her, she pushed back her sleeve to bind a wound, and he saw, plain in the lamplight, a crescent-shaped scar on her left wrist. I left the border lord mid-sentence. Aldrich can tell the story however he likes. I've heard 3 versions already, and I did not wait for an honor guard. I took my own horse and Fenn and the southern road and did not stop until the light failed. Fenn had been restless for 14 years. Not loudly, my wolf was never a creature for noise, but he paced at night, and never fully settled in any room, any bed, any hold, the way a man circles a chair he can't quite bring himself to sit in. My huntmaster used to joke that the king's wolf had never found a corner he liked. Riding south that first night, Fenn ran ahead of my horse the entire way, and did not once look back to see if I followed. 3 days' ride if a man stopped to sleep. I did not stop to sleep. The road south runs along the river for most of its length, and I knew every bend of it the way I knew the lines of my own palm. I had ridden it 100 times over the years, on 100 reports that came to nothing, until the riding itself had become a kind of habit, a thing I did the way other men pace a room. This time the river ran high and brown from the flood, and twice I had to wait while Fenn picked a path along ground that had been a road the week before and was now half a marsh, and both times the waiting felt longer than the 3 days combined. I told myself somewhere on the second night, that 14 years was a long time, that a woman with a healer's hands and a quiet way about her might have built a life of her own by now. A husband, children, a hearth she had chosen for herself, that did not need a king arriving on a lathered horse to ask if she remembered him. I told myself I would not make her choose between that life and anything. I told myself a great many sensible things, riding through the dark, and Fen ran ahead of every one of them. Thistlewood was smaller than I had pictured, a scatter of stone houses along a river still swollen and brown from the flood, half the bridge's timbers stacked on the bank for rebuilding. I left my horse at the edge of the village, because a king riding in on a war horse changes a place before he has said a word, and I wanted, for once, to arrive as nothing more than a man. The healing house was the largest building in Thistlewood, which told me everything about how the flood had gone. I stood outside it longer than I would like to admit. Fen did not. He went through the open door ahead of me, which he had never in 14 years done in any room I had not entered first, and by the time I followed him in, he was already lying down, not packing, not circling, down on the swept stone floor in the middle of a healing house full of strangers, his great head resting against the hem of a woman's skirt as she knelt beside a boy with a splinted arm. She looked up because of the wolf, of course. Everyone did. I had pictured this moment for 14 years in roughly 400 versions, and in not one of them had I imagined that the first thing I would notice after so long was that her hands had not changed. Still a healer's hands, careful, sure, gentle even now, frozen mid-motion over the boy's splint. Older, yes. There were lines at her eyes that had not been there at 20, and her dark hair had silvered at the temples, and none of it mattered even slightly, because the moment her eyes found mine, the thing in my chest that had been turning restlessly for 14 years, turning the way Fen paced, the way I had circled every room of my own keep without settling, simply stopped. Again. Properly this time. The compass needle 14 years late. Finding north and staying there. "Bram," she said, "not your majesty." Not even surprise, particularly, just my name, like she had been keeping it ready. The boy with the splinted arm looked between us with the frank interest of a child watching adults behave strangely. Wren finished tying off the splint. Of course she finished it first. 14 years had not changed that either. And only then did she stand, and Fen stayed exactly where he was, head on the hem of her skirt, as though he had found the one spot in the world he had been looking for and saw no reason to ever move again. "I told you not to look for me," she said. "I know. You came anyway." "I know." She studied me for a long moment, the kind of look a healer gives a wound before deciding how bad it really is, and then, unexpectedly, she laughed, not unkindly. 14 years, Bram." 14 years and 2 months, I said. "I stopped counting the days around year 9. My steward never did." That earned a smile, quick and real, the kind I remembered from a feast hall half a lifetime ago. But it faded fast, and what came after was quieter. "I left because I was certain that if I stayed, you would have had to choose between a peace your father died asking for and a bond you had barely had a chance to feel. I did not think that was a fair thing to put in front of a man on the morning of his wedding. I still do not, honestly." "You were right that it would have been a hard choice," I admitted. "You were wrong that I would have had to make it. Senna and I were never going to be a love match, Wren. We both knew it within a month, and within 2 years her pack found their peace through a different door entirely, and the marriage ended as gently as it began. She is happy. I have seen to it that she stays that way. I have been unmarried for 12 years, and not for lack of offers, and every single time my counsel raised the subject, I told them I was already promised, to a woman whose name I did not even know, who had a healer's hands and a crescent scar on her wrist, and who I intended to spend the rest of my life looking for, if that was what it took." 12 years, she repeated. 12 years of reports from every healing house in the kingdom. You moved around a great deal, for someone who did not want to be found. "I wanted to be useful," she said. I did not say I did not want, she stopped, started again more carefully. I was not running from you, Bram. I left so you would not have to choose. That is different from not wanting to be found. I know that too, I said, now. The healing house had gone very quiet around us. The boy with the splint, an older woman folding linens by the hearth, all of them watching with the particular patience of people who had lived through a flood together and recognized, correctly, that something important was happening, and that it was not theirs to interrupt. I crossed the room, Fenn shifted just enough to let me pass, the great traitor, and I did not kneel, because I did not want this to look like a king claiming anything. I simply stood in front of her, the way I should have 14 years ago, and said the only thing I had actually rehearsed on the ride south. I'm not here to ask you to be my queen, I said. Thistlewood needs a healer, and from what I can see, you are a very good one, and if you tell me that is the life you want, I will have that bridge rebuilt before autumn and never trouble you again, though I would ask you to let me write occasionally as a friend. But if there is any part of you that has ever wondered what the last 14 years might have looked like otherwise, I would like to find out. Slowly. However slowly you like. I have waited this long. I am in no hurry now. For a moment she did not answer, and I made myself stand still for it. No wolf's restlessness, no king's impatience, just a man who had finally said the true thing and was willing to live with whatever came back. What came back was her hand, reaching for mine, not taken, offered, and when our fingers met, for the second time in 14 years, I felt it again. The old burn scar warm under my palm where it had always been cool, and somewhere behind my ribs, the last of that restless turning settled. All the way down, the same stillness as a compass needle that has finally stopped searching, because it has nothing left to search for. Slowly, she agreed. I think I would like that very much. We rebuilt the bridge at Thistlewood before the first snow. I sent my own engineers, and Wren stayed on to see the healing house through the worst of the flood's aftermath, and I rode south more times that year than I had in the previous 5 combined, on excuses that grew thinner each time, and that nobody at court was unkind enough to question. She came to Greymark the following spring in her own time, exactly as I had promised. I gave her rooms of her own, with a door to the corridor that I instructed, very specifically, was never to be locked from the outside by anyone for any reason. A small thing, perhaps, to anyone who did not know what it was to leave a door open for 14 years and have no one walk through it. Fenn sleeps by that hearth most nights now. He still does not pace. He found his corner in the end. He simply needed someone in the room with him. And by her door, where she can reach it without thinking, there is still a healer's satchel, packed and ready, exactly as it always was. She has never needed it. I have never asked her to put it away. Some doors, I have learned, are worth keeping open even after everyone has already walked through them, so that the person on the other side never has cause to wonder, even for a moment, whether they are still free to walk back out. Sometimes in the evenings I find her at the window, looking south toward Thistlewood, and I no longer feel the old restlessness rise when I see it, only a quiet certainty that she will tell me about it if she wants to, and that either way, she will still be there when I cross the room. 14 years taught me the difference between waiting for someone and simply being patient with them. I am glad I learned it before it was too late to matter, though I suspect it never truly was.